Good morning, everyone. All right, so this video is a bit different because it's not really for my subscribers. I think the audience for this one is purely flat earthers. And the reason for that is that I honestly don't think any of the Globers are going to take anything useful away from this video because this stuff is really incredibly basic. So as you've probably guessed, we're going to talk about perspective versus orthographic views and how they relate to each other. Now, I'm sure all of you flirfs at one time or another have thrown out the accusation that us Globers are ignoring perspective or that orthographic views are Muppet vision. You can't look at the side of your own head. Or maybe that we're not taking angular size change into account. Well, there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that after this video, you'll realize just how wrong you were, make an earnest apology, and be welcomed back to reality with open arms. And no one needs this helping hand more than my friend Brian's logic, who is trying really hard to show how the infamous Blackpool image makes sense on a flat Earth. And this on screen now is his latest attempt. So what he's trying to demonstrate here is how the angular size of an object changes with distance. So the observer is over here on the right, and we've got the Eiffel Tower in the middle, and this blue line is measuring the elevation angle to the top, which for this tower is 20.2 degrees. So then what he does is draw that blue line to the top of the second tower from the right and show that the angle decreases. And if the Globers were watching this video right now, they'd be pointing out the obvious flaw here, and that is that the second tower from the right is physically smaller than the first tower. And that's just not how this works. Objects simply do not change their actual physical sizes. So the Eiffel Tower is 330 meters tall, and it will be 330 meters tall whether we are standing right next to it or whether we're trying to look at it from the edge of the observable universe. What will change is its angular size, and its angular size is simply a function of the object's actual physical size and its distance. So I tried to point out to Brian that he's basically double dipping here. So the angle will already decrease simply by moving the object further away, but it will also decrease again if you arbitrarily reduce its actual physical height. But Brian, being Brian, was of course having none of it. So I took it to Discord DMs and proposed a little challenge for him. And that was to download an app to his phone, go down to the local rugby field and take some elevation angle measurements of the goalposts from a few different distances and see how those perspective photos relate to an orthographic diagram. And of course, Brian, for some completely mysterious reason, was really hesitant to go and make those observations. So this afternoon, I took it upon myself to do it. So just to be clear on what I was asking Brian and what I ended up doing myself was to stand at each of these locations, use the app to take an elevation angle measurement to the top of the goalpost, as well as a depression angle measurement to the base of the goalpost. And we can add both those measurements together and we should get the angular size of the goalposts from each location. So position A is obviously right next to the goalposts, position B is the 22 meter line, C is the halfway line, and D is the other 22 meter line. And here are those measurements. So this is from position A, which is right next to the goalposts, taking the elevation angle to the goalposts at the other end, and you'll see that the angle I measured is 6.7 degrees. And here's the angle to the base of the goalpost, and you'll see it's 1.3 degrees below horizontal. So adding that 1.3 degrees to the 6.7 degree elevation angle, we get a total angular size for the goalposts at a distance of 100 meters of 8.0 degrees. So let's put that into an orthographic view and see if we can't use those angles to work out the height of the goalposts. Obviously that's my phone camera on the left, and I'm looking up at 6.7 degrees to the top of the goalpost and looking down at 1.3 degrees to the base. And what I've done here is make two right angled triangles, and we can use some trigonometry to solve the two unknowns on the right, XE for elevation and XD for depression. So XE works out to be 11.75 meters, and XD works out to be 2.27 meters. And add those two together and voila, you get the height of the goalpost to be 14.02 meters, which I'll round down to 14 meters. And remember, we also measured the angular size as 8.0 degrees, which was the sum of the two angles. Now, what does this look like in orthographic view? So this software on screen is called GeoGebra, which is the same software that Brian used in his video. And boy, am I glad he's learning to use it. What I tend to do in GeoGebra, though, is use the Algebra tab on the left. So you can input exact values for what you're trying to represent rather than sort of doing it or drawing it on the graph directly. So the first line is setting up me as the observer, and I've got the coordinates of x equals 0, y equals 1.8 because I'm standing on the goal line, which is our 0 point, and I'm holding my phone camera at approximately 1.8 meters above the ground. Next is the top of the goalpost, which is 100 meters away and 14 meters tall. So its XY coordinates are 100 and 14. And then obviously the base of the goalpost has coordinates 100 and 0. The next entry is just drawing a line between the base and the top to make it look pretty. The next line draws a line of sight from the observer up to the top of the goalpost. And this obviously represents our elevation angle measurement. And then the same thing for the line of sight to the base of the goalpost, which is our depression angle. And the last line is the most important. This shows the angular size of the goalposts. And as we saw in our measurements, that was 8.0 degrees. And you can see that's reflected here in GeoGebra. All right, so that's all fine and dandy. But what happens if we move to position B, which is the 22 meter line? So at the 22 meter line, we're 78 meters from the goalpost, and the elevation angle is 8.7 degrees. And the depression angle is 1.5 degrees. So add those two together to get the angular size measurement of 10.2 degrees. So now in GeoGebra, all we have to do is move our observer, and that should automatically recalculate the angular size. So I just have to change that x coordinate for the me observer from 0 to 22, and wow, who would have thought? The calculated angular size is exactly what we measured in reality, which was 10.2 degrees, and we did it by keeping the actual physical size of the goalpost the same at 14 meters. So let's try position C, which is the halfway line, so 50 meters from the goalpost. I measured an elevation angle of 13.5 degrees and a depression angle of 2.3 degrees, which makes a total of 15.8 degrees. And what do you know? If we set the observer in GeoGebra at the 50 meter line, we also get an angular size of 15.8 degrees. Again, keeping the height of the goalposts fixed at 14 meters. And just to finish up, the elevation angle at position D, which is 22 meters out from the goalposts, and therefore 78 meters from our starting point, is 28.9 degrees. And the depression angle is 4.5 degrees, which is a total angular size of 33.4 degrees. And I'm a little off here. The calculated angular size was 33.7. What I think happened is that because I was looking up at such a steep angle to the goalpost, I think I actually had the camera about 10 centimeters higher than my eye level, which threw off the measurements a little, so meh. Anyway, so I hope that was helpful to my beloved Flurfs. I am 110% sure that you will watch this video with an open mind, and never again will you make silly claims like that globers are ignoring perspective, or not taking angular size change into account. And I'm doubly sure you will never call orthographic view Muppet Vision ever again.